All right. My name's Jonathan. I'm from Jonathan Brill from Adelphi, and we also have Krista on the line, and we're here with Karen Mardar from Dutchess County Pride Center to help work our social action project and also learn more about the organization and some of the functions. And it's good to be with you, Karen. And I believe you're the supervisor of outreach and other operations in the organization. So I guess the first question of what the organization does, a brief overview, and also some of the services it offers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Karen Marder. I am the executive director and one of the co-founders of Dutchess County Pride Center. We have been around only for about 5 years, so we're still a relatively new and small nonprofit, but we are a nonprofit, and we provide support and social services to the local LGBTQ plus community of Dutchess County. We work with youth, we work with adults, we work with families, we kind of work with everybody. So that's kind of
Th-
the general
Yeah,
overview.
that's good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And what do social services look like in terms of actual on the ground stuff?
So for our youth, we have a couple of groups that we do, weekly groups. We have a group for LGBTQ plus teens. We have a tween group that's actually our newest group. It's 9 to 12 year olds. Because our teen group was 13 to 18, and we were getting a lot of people who were like, can my 12-year-old go to that group? Can my 11-year-old go to that group? So we said, okay, we'll just start a group for 9 to 12 year olds. And it is very well attended. Right now, it is actually our most well attended group. We have anywhere from 8 to 12 kids show up every week. Yeah, so this was obviously a really big need for this age group. So we have those two groups, and we also have a group that is for trans youth, basically 5 to 18. We very purposely chose a very wide age range for that group. That is kind of like solely a social group. It's really just a time for trans youth to get together and know that they are, accepted and affirmed in that space. Because sometimes they, might not be out at school or just not out in other places and really need that place to kind of just be themselves. It's been a very interesting group because we do have such a wide age range in that group, but it's been a very good thing. It's been really great for some of the younger trans kids who are just kind of starting to see what it's like to kind of be, look at, that, okay, this gender doesn't fit me, like what fits, and kind of see a bunch of older teens that are kind of living that life also. Some who are going through the same process at the same time, but are 10 years older than them. So yeah, so it's a really cool experience for them. We also do every other Friday we do a program. It's called Yay It's Friday. The kids told me I should have called it Gay It's Friday, but I didn't. But it is a teen drop-in, and it is like a purely social get together for teens, just kind of a place for them to go and hang out. And they play games, they play they do crafts, they eat a lot of junk food, so they just kind of hang out. Not a lot of phone time, which is, I think, great that they get a few hours to just kind of hang out with their friends, and they enjoy it enough to keep their phones in their pockets. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's
Um, for our adult population, we've really been focusing less on the like support group type groups and more on doing social events and kind of creating safe spaces for people to go. People sometimes when they hear, a group, they just think like, oh, it's like a therapy group where I have to sit there and talk, and that's not necessarily what I want. I just kind of want to like meet other people. I just want to be in community with other people. So we started this program. It's called Out and Proud Around Town. And basically we go to different places and we gather a bunch of queer people together in different places around Dutchess County. Um, the one of the problems with queer folks when they're trying to meet is that it's almost always centered on substance use or hooking up, which if that's your thing, that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, that is not what everybody wants. There's a lot of queer people who are in recovery and really don't want to go meet at a bar. People are just not interested in it. People who've kind of like are coupled, so they're not really interested in that like hookup scene because they've already found their person, but they still want to socialize with their community. So we try to do events that are not focused around, you know, being in a bar, hanging out, you know, that kind of stuff. Like we went bowling, we did axe throwing, we did a picnic, we went to an arcade. So really just trying to do like fun things. We actually next month are starting a baking class. Um, but just really like fun things to do with other queer folks, you know. Dutchess County is also a very weird county. It is, you know, some people call it a purple county. I call it a red county with blue polka dots. Um, so it is, you know, sometimes difficult to know what you're walking into when you walk into an establishment. You know, you could just as easily see a rainbow flag on the wall as you could see a Confederate flag on the wall in some
Oh,
places.
I see what you're saying about the establishment like relationship and where they're
Right.
coming from. Yeah.
So going to these events, you know that you're going to meet a bunch of other queer people at the event, so it feels a little safer. You know, we are living in in dangerous time to be a queer person. You know, New York is a little different than other states, but you know, it still is a very kind of scary time to be a queer person. So I think going to these events and knowing that you're going to be safe there is really huge.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah. And in terms of these events, what would you say the role of like resources? Because I know definitely resources listed on the website, such as legal resources, gender affirming care. Does this discussion of like different resources and different like methods of support kind of come up in the events? Like, is there a relationship between, because I know sometimes events could be a way to kind of coordinate on different resources, like kind of casual talk in terms of, oh, I'm going through this and I'm kind of looking for this. So I'm curious if more insight about the relationship between those two things.
I mean, yes, those conversations do
Yeah,
happen. You know, when we had 45 people bowling, that wasn't really a conversation that was
yeah,
very
yeah,
easy to have because, you know, bowling
yeah,
balls
that
and
makes
pins and
sense.
stuff.
Yeah,
You know, some of our smaller events like this weekend, we're doing this Friday, we're doing a board game night. So that's a much smaller setting. It's going to be at the Pride Center. So it's definitely a smaller group of people. So conversations are a little bit more intimate, a little more personal about stuff. You know, we get not so much at the meetups, but you know, we get a lot of, you know, requests for referrals all the time, particularly for mental health services. You know, as you both know, there is a mental health crisis in this country right now, and mental
yeah,
health services are almost impossible to find. And if you do find somebody who is actually accepting new clients, then they don't take insurance. And if they take insurance, they probably don't take your insurance. And if you do have insurance, they probably only give you like 10 sessions a year. Which I mean, in the therapy world, 10 sessions, you've just started the relationship building.
Yeah.
Like you haven't even,
Yeah.
you know, mostly, you know, you might have just kind of started the nitty gritty and it's like, well, I can't afford it. I'll see you next year. You know, like it's, um, so it's, you know, we really try to have, you know, I talk to the therapist beforehand and, you know, a lot of them will do sliding scale, fees for our community. One of the other big problems that I found initially when doing this was a lot of counselors will say that they work with the LGBTQ plus community. And what that really means is that they're not a raging homophobe, but they don't really have experience working with LGBTQ folks. They don't have experience working with trans people. Like they just, you know, but they just like, oh yeah, I can work with that, you know, community because I don't think that like they're, you know, horrible because they're gay. Um, so that is kind of like the first hurdle that people have to get over when looking for counselors.
That's a good point. Can I actually hop in with a question?
yeah, sure, yeah.
It's mentioning the legal services. What are like common legal situations that come up, particularly in your population?
I think the most common is name and gender changes.
Okay.
That is, you know, just kind of navigating that system of, you know, how do you, because it's a process. It is not, unfortunately, you have to go to court and you have to get a court order and then you have to submit the court order and, you know, things get lost in the mail and then you have to submit some paper. It's like a very long process.
Yeah.
Um, they have actually, New York State has tidied the process up a little bit. It's a little easier than it used to be
Okay.
to do the gender change, but the name change is still that is still a complicated process to get your name changed on your birth certificate.
Yeah, the research I was doing, it seems like a lot of states, especially Texas, are making it a lot harder for gender change. So I'm glad to hear New York State is trying to like streamline that a little bit.
Yes, yes. Yeah, once the name change has been put in place, the gender change, they've actually changed it to like a one-page sheet.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's definitely substantially easier to get that done.
Is non-binary considered a gender?
Yes.
Awesome. All right.
Yes, they have male, female, and X for, I guess other non-binary, basically all the non-binary genders go under
Good.
X.
Okay, good. All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
And I'm also curious about the relationship between education and also groups, because I feel like with the education, unfortunately, some states, as we mentioned, could be very restrictive in terms of, all right, you can't say this, or you can't like talk about this, or and even
What are your
states put
rights?
bills to out people. So I'm curious how the kind of experience in social groups and clubs and just interacting, and as you said, like having a safe community can sometimes differ from like the classroom experience, where what a socialization kind of at school, where a lot of kids are, or the classroom environment versus like the groups you sometimes set up.
Right. Different school districts kind of react very differently to having,
Yeah.
queer kids, mostly having queer kids, like they're just like whatever. It's really more the trans kids that is, kind of the ones who may or may not be treated, I don't want to say appropriately because that's not the right word, but a lot of the schools, like, you sometimes have to remind them what the child's rights are, when it comes to things like bathroom use and, name and pronouns and that sort of thing. Some districts are, that fast and it's done. Um, to give you a little history of Duchess Pride, the entire reason why Duchess Pride exists, is because when my son came out as trans in 2016, there was no resources available in Dutchess County. So, we kind of met a few other people who were going through the same process. And the three families kind of sat down and they all said, Karen, you're a social worker. You run groups with kids. You should start running some groups for these kids. And that is how Duchess Pride started. Um, so, but when my son, when we went to his school to change his name, we literally gave the paperwork to the secretary, went in to talk to his guidance counselor for 10 minutes. When we came out, she's like, done, name changed, all your documents, everything's changed.
Okay.
So we fortunately were in a very accepting district. Other districts, not so great about that.
Yeah. And it's interesting, and I know you mentioned kind of the topic earlier of like states and like different kind of political environments with each states, and how like Dutchess County, I think you described it as like purple red. So I'm curious if like that in the political like landscape, as you kind of said, could that be kind of a contributing factor in resources? And it sounds like your organization, which I applaud, is stepping up to address that. So what's that kind of like with organizations and like different terrain, and what kind of advice or counsel would you give?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, knock on wood, we've been very lucky that we have not had a large amount of pushback against us. Um, one of the things we do is we put on Poughkeepsie Pride, which is a pretty big event. And we have been very lucky that there hasn't been anything that has happened because of it. This year we're more concerned than we've ever been. We've put, this is going to be our 5th year in a row doing it, and we're actually hiring extra private security for the event, which is 5 years ago I would have never even thought of doing that. Like, it would have not crossed my mind that, yes, maybe there'll be some like protesters, but like the fact that I would need extra security to keep people safe because they may get violent or something, they're so we're completely redoing our volunteer trainings, for the volunteers, and we're including a very large section on, what to do at an event if there's protesters, what to do at an event if there's, if some violence breaks out, if somebody, what to do in these scenarios, which is, kind of,
Unfortunate.
again, was something that we need to do, and it was something we did need to add to our training anyway, but the urgency with which we are adding it is much more intense than I think it would. Like, we were kind of like, yeah, we should probably put that in there, and we would talk a little bit about it when we would do volunteer trainings, but it wasn't like an entire like half of the training was not focused on what to do in these scenarios. So it's definitely it makes being a group that works with a marginalized community a little bit harder when you know that there's literally some guy in the town of Poughkeepsie who used to keep a Nazi flag in his window. So like you see that and you know that like this is not a person who supports, any of the people that I work with.
Yeah, and in terms of because it does sound tough and it is like in terms of the reality, and I'm curious both how like some of the young folks in the organization, what kind of like social support and the importance of like social support to kind of like handle that, because I think there is like just from personal experience, there is something to be said when you have a community and with others who support you versus going alone. It's
Yes.
definitely like
Yes.
tough. So I'm curious some of their experiences with both handling it, but also like having support.
Yeah. I mean, the statistics don't lie. Yes, you can get
Yeah.
statistics. We all know that. But, the statistics are pretty consistent that, trans youth who have one accepting adult in their life are 4 times less likely to try to commit suicide. That's a huge statistic. That's like, when a trans adult or a trans child has one supporting adult in their life, their suicide attempt rate is the same as cisgender heterosexual youth. If they don't have an accepting, like that's 40% like have tried to hurt themselves. I mean those are big numbers. And honestly, there's times when I'm working with parents who are having difficulty. I'll throw those numbers at them and they're kind of like, okay, I will support my child because they don't want their child to hurt themselves. But and the kids in our program, I mean, I've had numerous parents tell me, I've had numerous kids tell me that like this was a lifesaver for them. Like just knowing that even if they were only coming once a month, just knowing that like, there was one day a month that they had this support and they had this group to go to. We currently right now have a trans 11-year-old and she's coming to our tween group, and her mom said to me that literally the 2 hours a month that she's in that group, it's the only time she smiles all month. When she's in school, she's unhappy, home, like, I mean, her parents are accepting, but just like being there with a bunch of other queer, young people just is her happy place right now. It's very cute. They actually like they've all just got phones, so they're like sent like they have like a text chain going, and like it's very funny. So,
I
but yeah,
actually like the wide age group because it's like they get mentors and they
yes,
have someone they can look up to. So I do think that's a great option. Yeah.
yeah, and it's good for the older kids too to kind of be like, I'm helping the little ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we do a parent support group also. I forgot to mention that earlier. And it's for parents of LGBTQ children of any age, so they don't have to be young people. Their kid could come out at 30 and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do about that. And they're welcome at the group. We've had grandparents come to the group. We've had aunts and uncles. We've had godparents. We've even had like best friends who were just like, I really want to support this kid. I don't really know how. Like, can you teach me how to support my best friend's child, this person who's like a kid to me, my own child. So that's kind of another resource that we offer to people.
Yeah,
I
that
don't think
sounds
I answered your question. Actually, I think I went off on a tangent.
no, I think it was answered. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, no, and new questions are always because it's good. It's a very fluid discussion about also how like because just how you mentioned about like the importance and I thought it was memorable of how people like seeing them, other people like them, just the idea of like representation. Because
Yep.
I think like a lot of the bills I've been reading, unfortunately, and in some states, like the idea is to kind of stigmatize and like ostracize and isolate, which really like takes away from that like sense of togetherness you're describing.
Yes.
Because like it can feel very isolating when you feel okay, I don't know people with similar experiences. Is it just me? I mean, those thoughts could occur. So I really do like the idea of all right, we're figuring this more out like together. Like yes, everything isn't like always easy to figure out for anybody, but we're kind of like in that together. So I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah, I
Or
always really, when people are kind of like, why does visibility matter? I don't know if either of you saw the videos of when they did the first commercial for the Black Little Mermaid, and there's videos of all these little girls who
yeah,
were seeing a Black Little Mermaid, and they'd be like, she looks like me, and like the joy and just the surprise and the happiness. I'm like, that's why visibility matters. That's why representation matters. These little girls have never seen somebody who looks like them as a princess. You know, and all little girls who want to be into princesses should see one that looks like them.
Yeah.
So you know, to me, that's a huge part of why representation and visibility is important. It's why we put on a Pride Parade and Festival, because you know, we put on the first Pride Parade and Festival. We were around for a year and a half, and we did not actually have a location. We were literally renting space by the hour in the town of Poughkeepsie to hold our programs. So a lot of people were like, why are you putting on a Pride Parade and Festival? You should really be focusing on getting a center. And, you know, we kind of were like, no, we need to show the community that we're here. We need to let people know that there is, in fact, an LGBTQ plus community in this area, because a lot of people are like, there's no gay people in Dutchess County. Like, yeah, no, there are. There's quite a few,
We're gonna
actually.
show you. Yeah. Before we wrap up, I actually had a question. I was very interested to know that you're a social worker, and I want to say, like, this is a very justice oriented field you've come into. Like, was that kind of your projection, or like was your son like a big like career changer in your life?
No, he is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. 100%. You know, it's not like before he came out, I was like, ew, gay people. Like, it's not like it's one of those things where like I have completely shifted my entire worldview.
Yeah.
You know, I've always been very supportive of the queer community. But you know, prior to doing this, I was a stay-at-home mom for 15 years. So, you know, there was it was a big shift to kind of go back to work. It's nice being my own boss, so I can work from home because, as you can see, I'm home. Um, but you know, I mean, I've always, my entire career, I've worked with young people. You know, part of working with young people has always been working with queer youth who are trying to figure themselves out. I mean, that's always been part of the work that I've done. You know, if you had told me 10 years ago this is what I would be doing, I probably would have said, I can't wait to see how I get there. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But it's not, you know, it's not so out of the realm of things that I could be doing. You know, I have been an executive director in another agency before, so you know, I've kind of been in this position. The one thing I like is that I still get to do direct work with the kids because there is so little staff that, you know, a lot of times executive directors are kind of up on their high horse over here. And that part I don't like. I don't like being removed. I like the direct interaction with people. So I like
Yeah.
that I can still do that.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, one
alrighty.
of our kind of,
Yeah.
you know, overarching things is that like when you walk into the center, we want you to feel comfortable. You know, we don't care what gender you are. We don't care what your sexuality is. We don't care what color your skin is. We don't care what religion you are. We just want you to walk in and feel welcome and comfortable. You know, like unless you're like a white supremacist, then we want you to be really uncomfortable with the number of rainbows we have around our center. But besides those people, we want you to be really comfortable. And you know, a lot of times, like one of the first things people say when they walk in, they're like, "Oh, it's so like fun in here. It's so cozy and like it's so colorful." And every time somebody says that, it just kind of like I just get a little like, because you know that's what we're trying to do.
I think we're wrapping up, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So, yeah, well, I definitely want to thank you for coming and like sharing and like highlighting both your organization, different people's experience, and also your experience. So, do you have any closing notes on anything about the work you do, or any like personal statements or
And I love
things?
the website anyway. We can
Yeah,
look you up. Any Facebook.
yeah, that.
Yeah, we have Facebook and Instagram. Their Duchess Pride is the name of them. Our website, www.duchesspridecenter.org. Um, we we actually have a Twitter, but like I don't think anybody's posted on it in like 4 years. So I wouldn't advise going there, but if you find it, let me know. I assume it's still active.
Yeah,
I assume it still exists in this world. We tried to do a TikTok account, but TikTok trends are too fast, and the kids weren't meeting often enough to be able to, like, we need one person whose entire focus is just TikTok. So
Yeah.
that's not happening. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's important for people to accept differences in each other, and that's a big part of what we're doing is just trying to, teach that, that acceptance, and that it's really important. One of the things I do, I go into schools and I educate educators on some of the basics of, the language of LGBTQ, how to support your students and stuff like that. That I think right now is probably one of the more important things that I do, because, education is huge, and we're trying to expand on that. So
Yeah, making schools more inclusive.
yes.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
very
thank
welcome.
you. Thank you
And
for
if you
being up.
have any, follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen.
Okay. Have a
Yeah,
good day. Bye.
Bye.
thank you. I'm gonna just